Have you been forgetting things you used to care about? Do you wake up feeling heavier, but can't explain why? Does the world feel just a little too loud? A little too fast? A little too far from something real? Are you questioning your direction, your ambition, even your identity? Have the things you used to chase stopped making sense? Have your accomplishments started to feel like noise? You are not broken. You are being broken open. This isn't collapse. It's a summons. Because in Taoist philosophy, falling is not failure. It's the universe, shifting you, stripping away what you've outgrown, pulling you into something more real. This video is not just a reflection. It's a portal, a door you weren't meant to knock on, but to fall through. You didn't land here by accident. You were called. You were brought here by the Tao itself. So sit with this voice. Let these words meet you in the dark. Let them walk beside you, not to rescue you, but to remind you you're not falling apart. You're falling inward. This is not the end. It's the beginning of who you are when all pretending stops. They told you to keep going, to push through, to rise above. They said, don't quit, don't cry, don't stop. But they didn't ask, what are you running on? Western culture worships progress, movement, momentum. It teaches collapse is weakness, stillness is failure, rest is laziness. But Taoism whispers something else. Lao Tzu says, he who stands on tiptoe does not stand firm. You weren't meant to be a machine. You were meant to be a field, a living organism, a seasonal being. And all seasons include a fall. The Tao teaches that power is not in constant rising, but in knowing when to fall and how to fall without fighting the descent. So let me ask you, have you confused persistence with punishment? Have you mistaken burnout for bravery? There's a moment when resilience becomes self-abandonment, when your discipline becomes disconnection, and the Tao says, stop, let it fall. In Chinese medicine, when the body stops responding to stimulation, it's not because it's lazy. It's because it's protecting the last of its essence. A sacred shutdown, an act of preservation, not failure, not shame. What if your collapse is a form of wisdom? What if it's your body's way of saying, I refuse to lie for you anymore? Practice. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Don't try to clear your mind. Just notice what your energy wants to do when you stop telling it where to go. Let it fall. Let it settle. Let it speak. Not all collapse is visible. Sometimes it's the identity that breaks first. The persona, the performance, the mask you forgot you were wearing. You spent years becoming someone, a capable person, a strong one, a reliable one, a good one. But here's the secret no one tells you. The Tao doesn't care about your performance. It cares about your alignment. Lao Tzu didn't say, be good. He said, the way of the Tao is to return. Return to what is real. Return to what is whole. Return to what is hidden. And sometimes, the only way back is through collapse. You fall apart, so the mask can fall away. You shatter, so the false self can't survive. You weep, so the performance finally dies. In Taoist alchemy, there is no bad stage of transformation. Even the decay is sacred. Rot feeds roots. Darkness restores vision. Collapse prepares the field for a more honest crop. Let's ask something radical. What part of you needed to fall? Not because it was weak, but because it was in the way. Reflection prompt. Who did I think I had to be in order to be loved? Whose expectations have I been carrying like armor? What version of me is exhausted from pretending? Write without censorship. Write until your hand trembles. That's the part ready to fall. This is the Tao of shedding. This is not destruction. It's disidentification. You are not your job. You are not your family role. You are not your trauma's survivor story. You are the space beneath it all, waiting to be filled with truth. And remember this, the path doesn't disappear when the persona collapses. It just gets quieter. You have to listen with different ears now, not with ambition, but with attunement. Not all movement is healing. Some of it is panic wearing a mask. The Tao doesn't rush. It waits until movement becomes true change. Your mind wants to solve this. It wants a plan, a framework, a checklist. But the Tao whispers, water doesn't plan how to reach the sea. It just flows downhill. This is not the time for mental mastery. This is the time for energetic humility. Because collapse isn't an equation to solve. It's a current to surrender to. Let's name the trap: overprocessing, trying to understand your way out of pain, thinking that more insight equals more safety. But collapse isn't a logic puzzle. It's a frequency shift, and your nervous system has to catch up before your intellect does. Here's what most people don't realize. You can't regulate from the neck up, which means no amount of positive thinking will restore the Tao unless the body remembers how to trust again. Practice. The 3-second grounding drop. Whenever your mind spirals, pause. Place one hand over your heart, one over your belly. Breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds. Exhale through your mouth like fogging a mirror. Feel the weight of your body. Repeat silently. I am not my thoughts. I am the field they pass through. Repeat until the current softens. Now listen carefully. Even your spiral is a kind of flow. Even your confusion is part of Tao's choreography. Even your numbness is intelligence. The Tao never demands you feel better. It just invites you to feel real. And the most radical truth of this stage? The more you resist the descent, the longer it lasts. But when you flow with it, when you trust the fall, something else begins to awaken beneath the wreckage. Not all collapses feel the same, because not all collapses are wearing the same mask. Sometimes you fall like fire. Sometimes you vanish like mist. Each collapse has a pattern, and each pattern hides a role. Let's name them. If I hide, I won't be hurt. This collapse is withdrawal. You go silent. You vanish from texts. You smile and say, I'm fine. But inside, you're disappearing, hoping someone might come looking. Taoist mirror. Water withdrawing into stillness. But too long in silence becomes stagnation. Healing phrase. I can be seen even when I'm sad. If I explode, at least I'll feel real. This is rage collapse, a fire that scorches everything near it. Because it's better to burn than to be ignored. You yell. You break things. You want someone to finally say, I hear you. Taoist mirror. Fire must express, or it implodes. Healing phrase. I can express without destruction. If I move fast enough, I won't feel it. You stay busy, hyperproductive, running from one to-do list to the next. You collapse into distraction, into movement, into numb efficiency. Taoist mirror. Wind chasing its own tail. Healing phrase. Stillness won't shatter me. If I take care of everyone else, I won't fall apart. This is codependent collapse. You turn your pain into service, into martyrdom. You help others as a way to forget yourself. Taoist mirror. Earth absorbing more than it can hold. Healing phrase. My worth isn't measured by who I rescue. If I feel nothing, nothing can hurt me. This is the quietest collapse, but maybe the most dangerous. You scroll, you sleep, you laugh at things that don't reach you anymore. Taoist mirror. Metal shutting down sensation to preserve form. Healing phrase. Feeling is not failure. Feeling is freedom. So, which mask have you worn? Which archetype do you return to when the ground opens beneath you? And are you ready to step behind the mask? Practice. The Collapse Archetype Journal. Which role do you resonate with most right now? How has that pattern protected you in the past? What would your healing sound like if it had a voice? Because collapse isn't just an ending, it's a rehearsal for remembering the self beneath the performance. What if the weight you're carrying wasn't born in your lifetime? What if your collapse began in someone else's body? A mother who never cried, a father who disappeared into silence, a grandparent who survived but never spoke of it. Their unprocessed grief becomes your background frequency. You think you're anxious, but it's inherited panic. You think you're broken, but it's borrowed sorrow. Collapse has a bloodline. Science has a name for it: epigenetic imprinting. Spiritual traditions have another name: ancestral memory. Same truth, different tongue. Pain that isn't spoken becomes pain that is transferred. The Tao reminds us, the river doesn't begin where you think it does. But how do you know if the pain you're carrying didn't start with you? You may be carrying legacy collapse if you feel guilt for resting, even when exhausted. You overfunction in crisis, like your body's waiting for it. You can't explain why you flinch at certain tones, smells, or silences. You keep sabotaging joy that feels too big, like it's forbidden. This isn't just psychology. It's energetic recycling. Your nervous system becomes the unfinished sentence of those who came before. Here's the paradox. Even if it's not your fault, it might still be your work. But not to carry it, to transmute it, to return it to the Tao. Practice. Write a letter to the ancestor who felt most collapsed. Speak the words they were never allowed to say. End the letter with, "I love you. I'm releasing this on your behalf. It no longer defines me. It no longer defines you." Then burn it, or bury it. Let the earth absorb what your body doesn't need. Taoist reminder. You are the bridge between what collapsed and what can be rebuilt. Your healing isn't selfish. It's ancestral alchemy. Collapse that is inherited can become strength that is cultivated. But only if you're willing to be the one who ends the pattern and begins again. After collapse, Everyone talks about reinvention, new chapter, next level, fresh start. But the Tao doesn't start with aspiration. It starts with anchoring. Because you can't grow tall if your roots don't go deep. What are roots really? They're not routines. They're not goals. They're not even values. Roots are the invisible truths you live by, even when everything else falls apart. They are felt, not chosen. They sound like, I may not know who I am, but I know how I love. I may not have clarity, but I know how to sit with silence. I may not be ready, but I know how to return to breath. Roots don't make plans, they make stability. Lao Tzu said, returning is the motion of the Tao, not progression, not ascension, not hustle, returning to simplicity, to slowness, to the essential self. Taoist wisdom invites you to reroot before rebuilding. That's not laziness, it's alignment. Practice, the inner root inventory. Take a pen, take a slow breath. Write down 3 sentences that begin with, when everything fell apart, I still. No pressure, no poetry, just truth. These are your roots. Water them, honor them. Then ask, how can I rebuild a life that grows from these roots, not in spite of them? This is where many people rush. They lose a job and immediately chase 3 new ones. They leave a relationship and download 5 dating apps. They declare a reinvention while still bleeding from the fall. But Taoism whispers, don't build new towers from the ashes of panic. Because collapse isn't an invitation to prove your worth. It's a request to return to what is worth being. Root first, bloom later. Everything in nature knows this order. The tree doesn't announce its spring in the middle of winter. The river doesn't rush back before the snow has melted. And you? You don't need to rebuild your life overnight. You just need to root into what's quietly still true. The way forward starts by going inward. The blueprint of the next chapter lives not in the future, but in the quiet values that survived the fall. You've heard the advice. Reinvent yourself. Step into your power. Become the person you were meant to be. But what if becoming isn't a performance? What if evolution isn't a campaign, but a tuning? Your identity is not a fixed label. It's a signal. It broadcasts through tone, through movement, through presence. You don't need to declare, I'm powerful now. You simply need to sound like it in your decisions, in your silences, in your eyes. The Tao doesn't self-promote. It simply flows, and everything around it adjusts. So do you. Practice the frequency scan. Sit quietly. Feel into a version of you who is already healed, already steady, already free. Ask, if this healed version of me walked into the room right now, how would they sit? How would they speak? What would they no longer explain? Then try it. Not forever, not as a mask, but as a tuning fork. Let yourself vibrate with the version of you that already exists in potential. Most people try to force change. They give themselves deadlines. They make dramatic declarations. They become exhausted actors in the theater of transformation. But Taoism teaches the Tao does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. That's tuning, not pushing, just aligning. You don't need to chase the new you. You need to quiet the static so it can emerge. A caterpillar doesn't shout, I'm transforming. The moon doesn't explain itself when it vanishes. The oak doesn't justify the acorn, and neither should you. Your real shift is not external. It's electromagnetic. People will feel it. Opportunities will align with it. Your environment will rearrange for it, all because you tuned. There's no final version of you, no summit, just seasons, cycles, spirals. The Tao doesn't end, neither do you. They'll ask you, so, are you back to your old self yet? Feeling like yourself again? Ready to get back to normal? But here's the quiet truth. You didn't fall to return. You fell to uncover. Normal was often a cage with golden bars, routines that numbed you, habits that hid your wounds, stability that silenced your intuition. Getting back to normal might mean returning to what broke you in the first place. Taoism never speaks of normal. It speaks of natural, flow, stillness, spontaneity. You don't go back, you emerge. The Tao doesn't ask, who were you before the fall? It asks, who are you now that you've seen the bottom? It doesn't offer restoration, it offers rooting. After collapse, you don't rise like a phoenix. You grow like a forest, slow, wide, real. The old path no longer fits because it wasn't yours. This time, you're walking barefoot, listening to the moss, letting the stones guide your steps. Now that you're here, not broken, but broken open, try these rituals. Morning stillness, no phone, no affirmations, just you, listening to whatever survived the fall. Stone anchoring, carry a small stone you picked up during your lowest day. Let it remind you of the gravity you endured and didn't escape from, but integrated. Moon tracking, follow the lunar cycle for 1 month. Notice when your energy wanes instead of trying to fix it. Practice showing up anyway, gently. You don't owe the world a comeback. The Tao doesn't rush, it doesn't recover, it transforms. You don't owe anyone a comeback story. You owe yourself the permission to never be that same version again. You don't have to glow, you don't have to hustle, you just have to keep listening. To the earth beneath your changed feet, to the wind that now carries your name differently, to the Tao that was never gone. Closing whisper. You collapsed, you softened, you remembered. Now, you walk, not the way they expect, not the way you once did, but the way only you, rooted, unhidden, alive, could ever walk again. Falling was never failure. It was the first step back to the Tao.